that the survey was conducted in early January during our first bout with this now infamous polar vortex. So it's entirely possible that folks might have been a little bit grumpy at the time that we talked to them. So I ask you now, hold on. We're going to move very quickly through a lot of information. And like the economy itself, it may be just a little bit of a bumpy ride. So, as we look at the survey results, while we ranked very strong in the Milken report, the information gleaned from the employer survey was not necessarily as positive throughout. So first of all, the survey tells us that employment levels in the region stabilized a bit. Note that the percentage of companies adding positions during 2013 fell slightly, while those in the whose workforce remained constant represented a higher percentage than in the prior year. Note also that the percentage of employers that shed positions was smaller than in the previous year. Now let's take a look at gross sales. And here's where we start to see some clear declines during 2013. In fact, while 83.5% of those surveyed in 2012 reported either stable or increased sales, only 69.9% did so in 2013. Now let's take a closer look at how our manufacturing sector fared in terms of their expectations for the year. We'll talk later about why we're focusing here on manufacturing, but here we see that the actual sales show declines in the percentage of companies anticipating an increase or stable sales compared to what had been projected. You're following all this, right? And an increase in the percentage of companies actually showing a decline in sales relative to what had been anticipated a year earlier. And here's where we have to admire the optimism of our business community. Even though sales were significantly off during 2013, a significantly higher percentage of manufacturers are feeling an increase coming during 2014 than even what had been projected in 2013. Remember this slide as we move through the information, because we're going to show a little bit later where there might actually be some reason for this seemingly unbridled optimism. Okay, so now looking at profits overall, we see that the trend among respondents was a significant drop in profits from 84% having experienced an increased or stable profit level in 2012 down to 62.9% having a stable or increased profit level in 2013. So again, let's look at the manufacturers. As we witnessed with the sales activity, our manufacturing respondents reported declines in profits throughout. We see here not only the fact that far fewer saw stable or increased profits than what they projected prior to the year, but the percentage of companies showing declining profits was significantly higher than what was anticipated in last year's survey. Here again, however, our manufacturers are ever the optimists, with more than 85% of the companies surveyed projecting stable or increased profits during 2014, even though the trends were definitely opposite in 2013. Now, here's another red flag that I want to call your attention to. Obviously, the trend line with regard to access to quality workers is not moving in the direction we'd like to see. For the first time in at least 5 years, fewer than half the companies surveyed believe that there is good or excellent availability of quality workers. Fox Cities region is not unique with regard to this phenomenon. We read and hear about similar trends and skills gaps throughout the nation. But it's important to understand that as strong and as vibrant as we like to think our local economy is, we're not immune to this workforce issue. And yet, apparently not every industrial sector would agree that there's a problem. Within our region's finance, insurance, and real estate sector, companies surveyed were more impressed about their new workers than they had been the year before. 72.7% rated the availability of quality workers as good or excellent, compared to only 55% the year before. Now, let's take another look at the manufacturing sector. Again, the trends here are troubling, with a smaller percentage of manufacturers satisfied with the availability of quality workers. All of these arrows are moving in the wrong direction. We're not particularly interested in being average in anything here. It doesn't say much for our competitiveness. So this is something that we need to take note of. Another measure of the strength of the regional economy is the percentage of companies that project a capital expansion during the coming year. And here we see a significant drop-off from last year, where 29.5% of the companies indicated plans for expansion, compared with only 16.4% this year, nearly a 50% decline. Now, perhaps of some interest is the fact that companies surveyed are showing increasing confidence in the national economy, with those falling in the average, good, or excellent categories growing from 49.5% last year to 63.9% this year. And the verdict on our local economy is somewhat mixed, with a slight uptick in the good to excellent category, but note the slight increase in the percentage of those rating the local economy as below average or poor. Take particular note of the fact that this represents the first year where the trend line is heading back up after a few years of really weak confidence, notably 2010, 11, and 12. So what we've seen to this point is a summary of survey results for 213 regional employers. Now let's take a look at some broader numbers, those coming to us from the Bureau of Labor Statistics and some local primary data. That might be giving us then a more objective view of what's really happening within our economy. So, in terms of employment trends, let's look at the service sector. We've all heard that we're becoming a service economy, and while we're not seeing significant growth in service employment over the recent past, we can also see that this sector did not seem to suffer the same declines in numbers as did other sectors. And I want to qualify what I'm showing you now. All of these graphs are taken and showing the performance of the regional economy in the Fox Cities. These are not national, these are Fox Cities graphs that I'm showing you. Here's one that's been hit hard. This is the retail sector. Note the cliff from 2008 to 2010. We're now just starting to see a slight rebound from that severe trough, but we have a ways to go to fully recover. And similarly, we see that our friends in finance, insurance, and real estate took a hefty hit during the recent recession and are starting a slow climb back. Again, if you look at the numbers, however, this sector remains far below its peak employment level in 2007. Now, this one is really different. No decline here. Would anyone want to venture a guess as to what sector this growth line represents? Anybody? Well, it's healthcare. We recognize that we have an extremely strong healthcare sector here in the Fox Cities region, and hope to see this trend line continuing in the same direction as we go forward. Now, I told you we're moving a little quickly. I want to show you a very quick peek at the economic performance of the Fox Cities region as measured by employment change compared to that of the state of Wisconsin and that of the country at large. The green line is the United States, the red line is the state of Wisconsin, and the orange line is the Fox Cities region. You'll note that they track fairly close to one another until recently. Take a look at the change occurring since the middle of 2012, about the time that the Fox Cities Regional Partnership was formed. Did I say that, really? Clearly, we've been on a different trajectory in the past year and a half, and we hope to be able to sustain that line into the future. You can see there is a dramatic change of direction there. Per capita income growth is an important measure of overall economic conditions and is often used as a performance measure for economic development activities. Here we find the same colors, green for the U.S., red for Wisconsin, and orange for the Fox Cities region. While we observe a slightly widening gap between the state and the nation, our regional per capita income appears to be tracking pretty consistently with the nation's. The real challenge for us here is to work at closing that gap. Another key indicator of overall economic conditions is new housing starts. This data provided by the Valley Home Builders Association shows that perhaps we've hit bottom after 2 consecutive years of increased starts. At the same time, we have a long way to go to match the peak years from some time ago. Now, if we return to the survey results, see that there is relatively a small change in our regional employers' perceptions regarding the Fox Cities region as a good place to do business. Granted, the change is not in the direction we'd like to see, but generally there's nothing here to get overly concerned about. If, however, we look at the same question answered by our manufacturers, we now have some real concerns. The trends don't lie. Last year, 84% of those surveyed rated the Fox Cities region as either better or much better as a place to do business. This year, we are looking at only 61.7%, a decline of 22.3% in 1 year. What's even more troubling is the increase in the percentage of employers rating the region as about the same, from 12% last year to 33.33% this year. Now, the reason this is so important is if a company feels that this area's business climate is only about the same as other cities competing for jobs, we are in a weaker position to retaining them here. So, here's why I'm paying so much attention to the manufacturing sector in my remarks. Manufacturing represents a full 22% of our total employment base here in the Fox Cities, which is more than most areas of the country. Since manufacturers are primary employers that result from the sale of their products, and those of some regional service companies outside the community are really what provide the support for our local retail, service, and professional sectors. And let's not overlook the fact that the average manufacturing wage here in the Fox Cities is $54,296. That's a local number. In fact, this area has been extremely fortunate to have had a powerful manufacturing sector for many, many years. If we compare manufacturing activity throughout the country, we find this representing the average level of activity in a community of our size throughout the country. By comparison, this graph, or this icon, represents the fact that our region has nearly 2.5 times the average level, making manufacturing our bread and butter economically. And because of the importance of manufacturing's impact on the local economy, we at the Regional Partnership have chosen to emphasize it in our brand awareness efforts, stating that you can expect things to be made better here in the Fox Cities. So how exactly are we doing locally with regard to manufacturing? It certainly was good news to learn that our manufacturers in the region had added 1,114 new jobs last year. That represents a 3.3% annual growth rate compared to 1% in the state and 0.7% throughout the nation. In fact, our manufacturing sector has grown by 5,020 jobs in the past 4 years. So when we take a look at the trend line, we might be pretty pleased to see that manufacturing is on the rise here in the Fox Cities region. But don't be fooled. Let's take a longer look at the same trend. Now, we see that even though we've gone through 4 years of strong growth in manufacturing, we find ourselves with more than 1,000 fewer manufacturing jobs than we had just 10 years ago, and more than 5,000 fewer than what we had in 2002. This one slide, perhaps more than anything else, substantiates why the Fox Cities Chamber stepped forward and provided the leadership to establish what is now the Fox Cities Regional Partnership. So, what is it exactly that we do at the Regional Partnership? Well, we work with many partners, both public and private, to grow a local economy by supporting retention, expansion, and attraction. Oh, I'm sorry. You're asking, what is that man doing there? Well, herding cats. Yeah, and there are many days when this job feels a lot like this. But we assist our local primary employers in securing the resources they need to be more competitive, more strong, and in the process hopefully add to the local job base. And as Shannon indicated earlier, we market the Fox Cities region to national and even international markets in order to attract new primary employers to the area. Now, it's through these efforts and those of our partners, but in all honesty, through the efforts of our primary employers, and the jobs that they create, that we hope and fully intend to bring you an even stronger report here next February. I thank you for your attention, your support for the Chamber and for the regional partnership, and at this point in time, I'd like to bring forward Kathy Bloomreich, who is Senior Vice President of Private Banking for First National Bank, and she will introduce our keynote speaker. Thanks very much.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us. F&B Knox Valley is proud to be the presenting sponsor of the Chamber's Economic Outlook Breakfast, and today's keynote speaker, Mr. Brian Ballou. Mr. Ballou has served as CEO of ITR Economics since 1987, is the chief economist for Vistage International, a global organization comprised of over 14,000 CEOs, and is one of the country's most informed economists. He co-authored Make Your Move, a book on increasing profits through the business cycle changes. Mr. Ballou has been providing workshops and economic analysis seminars in 7 countries to thousands of business owners and executives for the last 28 years. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Brian Ballou.
Hope you're all doing well. Thank you very much for coming out this morning. Thank you very much for having me here as your keynote speaker. I am an economist. I want to make sure that's perfectly clear. That was a very nice introduction, but I don't know that that was stressed enough. You have voluntarily come this morning to listen to an economist. All right? What that means is that I've been specially trained to have no feelings. All right? Given that, I have to ask you a question. How many of you are skeptical about most things an economist has to say about the future? Let me see a show of hands. Yeah, you should be skeptical. My industry has a lousy reputation, and deservedly so. I want you to maintain that skepticism here, all right? Don't just take what I have to say at face value and not put it through some sort of mental gymnastic mill. Give it some rigorous analysis. See if it makes sense to you. Because only after you do that will what we're doing here this morning be worthwhile. Because I think economics and economic analysis forecasts without some sort of decision on your part to take action is worthless. I mean, it's one thing to say this is what the future is likely to be like. It's quite another to say, I really think the future is going to be like this, and therefore I need to do A, B, and C. I'm going to give you some of those A, B, and C items as we go through our time here this morning, but I can't cover all of your individual needs, so that's part of the process that I'm asking you to have in mind. Because I have no feelings, if you need coffee, if you need to leave the room while I'm talking, it's help yourselves, all right? I'm used to people leaving the room when I talk. It isn't whatever I do. You just do what you have to do. One of the ways that I try and get some credibility with audiences is by showing them this. Every economist that you listen to should be willing to show you how the last year, the last several years played out relative to their forecasts. We always start with this slide at ITR, which stands for I Talk in Riddles, by the way. The first column are the major headline items, from U.S. gross domestic product to U.S. industrial production, which is manufacturing, mining, and utilities rolled up, all the way through employment. Duration typically means how long was that forecast in place before December 13 rolled around. And the duration column is important because many other forecasting companies changed their forecast 9 times during the course of 2013 before we got to December. We have one forecast, and we lay it down so that you can see it. The third column is what we forecasted. The fourth column is actual results for December, and then the percent deviation. And those percent deviations are fairly normal for us. They're not big, they're relatively small, because we rely on objectivity, we rely on leading indicators, and because we really don't care whether the economy is growing or contracting. The only thing that I care about is getting it right for you, so that you can make rational decisions, whether it's good times or bad times. Fortunately for us here this morning, what ITR was looking at as we go through 2014, 15, 16, 17, inclusive, are good years. The economy is likely to be slowing down a little bit in 2014 in terms of its rate of growth. But you all operate at a microeconomic level. I talk macroeconomics, all right? So if there's a slowdown occurring at the macroeconomic level, this 30,000-foot level, what that means is that you have to have some microeconomic ways to counteract that deceleration, to make sure that you are still growing as strong as you conceivably can. The second half of 2015, we see the U.S. and the global economy getting stronger. Get stronger in 2016, get stronger in 2017. One of my take-homes for you, one of my management objectives, one of my so what's about this is this question, really. Are you ready for being that much busier than you have been over the course of 2013? Do you have enough people, the right people in the right chairs? Are you expecting enough out of your sales team? Are you budgeting for growth? Do you have enough capital lined up to make that growth happen? Or are you still living in the shell-shocked past of 2008, 2009, 2010, and even parts of 2011? Because that's history. That's not where we're going. A lot of economists like to focus on our national debt and the healthcare issues going on in the United States, and we're going to take a look at those very briefly because we're not Pollyannish about the future. But there are so many things going right about our economy, within our economy, that often